Hola community, welcome to BlenderToday, episode 239. And I was thinking, should I keep doing this splash screen of 2.39, 2.40? And I think I will, because it's in a few months, actually in January, it's the 30th anniversary of Blender, and I will never get to do this anymore. So yeah, there was no splash screen for 2.39 because, as we talked about it last week, 2.40 was the big release where all the changes, well, 242 was the one where all the changes from Elephant String took place. So what are we going to talk about this time? There is, as you may notice in the name of this video, a new engine in town, which you may have been using already because it was experimental. It's no longer experimental. So that's the clickbait for this episode. It's EEVEE next. We're going to talk about that. There is also some changes in the compositor, in cycles, EEVEE next. Grease Pencil news also since this week. And that's about it. So there's not much. Yes, I know. Next week, though, I just heads up, I'm not going to be doing this live stream next week because it's the week of the Blender conference here in Amsterdam. But instead of having this Monday news, you're going to have the 100 talks, more or less. Like, yeah, maybe 80, 90, 100 videos are going to be uploaded to this YouTube channel in the coming weeks, 2 weeks. I think they're right after the conference. So if you're going to be at the conference, see you next week. Otherwise, I will come back. Maybe the week after is going to be the week before Blender 4.0. Let's talk about that in a bit. Other than that, I think we are good to to start now. Wait. What happened actually this week? Actually, some big news happened in big as a splash screen, because yes, Blender 4.0 has an official splash screen right now. Yes, it is the one and only Gaku Dada. So let's open the actual artwork. It's beautiful in Gaku's style. This will be the splash screen for the Blender 4.0 version, the big release. And as always, the blend file for this is gonna be available for everybody to play with under Creative Commons attribution, share alike. So you get to see how Gaku work. Although you can already do that because I think he already contributed some files to the demo files for Grease Pencil. This is all Grease Pencil, and actually this might be, will definitely be the last splash screen done with Grease Pencil 2.0, because we know the next big thing is 3.0, and 4.1 is not going to have a Grease Pencil. Probably no, I don't think it's going to have a Grease Pencil splash screen, because we gotta, change it up a bit. This is amazing. So thank you, Gaku, for working on this, for preparing it. And this is how 4.0 looks like. This is a picture, though. This is what I tweeted. I how do you say it nowadays? Posted on X last week, and on Mastodon. We are on Mastodon, by the way. Just a reminder. Another splash that showed up this today, actually, a few hours ago. It's this one from the Blender Studio. This splash is is one that is gonna be with us for a while. It's the image that it's going to replace the one from Sprites, the Sprites one with the whole gang just looking at the unknown with a flashlight. Well, that is replaced with this. So this is everybody's face when trying alpha, right? When trying unreleased software. So some are like this, some are developers are usually like this, artists are like this, and I'm the pen that is floating there in the background. So this is going to be, this is not the splash screen for 4.1. This is the splash screen for the development version of Blender 4.x. So not anymore the one from sprites. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this Blender over here, and I'm gonna switch into the I had this one that I wanted to share, the page from Gaku, gakutada.com, and also that I made a thread where you can ask questions. I'm gonna try to answer them towards the end of the show, which is in a bit because there's not much new. Although, yeah, there's nearly 300 commits, of which 81 are fixes and 56 are cleanup. So a lot of fixes going on this week. Let's start with what's new in animation. So this week, animation has one change only, the animation module, a bunch of fixes, but one new feature, which is that the bone colors can be overridden now. Yay. That's it. A few lines of code to remove the to add the flag, the override flag. Let's see. When will 4.0 release? Whenever you have that question, that when a Blender is going to be released, go to projects.blender.org, and right away on the sidebar here you'll see when everything. So the Blender 4.0 project has the details here where beta is going on, started in September 27th ish, and it's gonna go on until November 1st, and then 1 week later Blender 4.0 is gonna be released. And the same with other projects. You can actually see the timeline already for 4.1, already planned for release on March 5th 2024, which is like forever from now, but also not forever from now. Let's continue. Well, we go in alphabetic order. That was A for animation, B for batch renaming. This is a contribution by the community. They here EEVEE added the brush and scene data types to the batch rename operation. So batch renaming is actually a very small patch. So it's more of a oversight than from whoever implemented the first version. So Ctrl F2 for batch rename, or you can also go to edit. Batch rename now allows you to select brushes and scenes as well. So you can rename scenes, you can rename brushes all at once. And this way you can actually find out the Blender has 77 brushes by default. Next. Compositor. Well, C for compositor. Allow variable size Kuwahara. So now you can change the size property of the Kuwahara into a node socket, so you can have a variable size. You can specify different sizes at different lengths dynamically, and it seems to work great in some. Well, 2 weeks ago it seems to work great in some cases. That's funny. Nice. But oh, nice. Okay, this is kind of amazing. Okay, this night and day. I should have called this thing. It's much more important than EEVEE Next. No, it's not important. It's just that EEVEE Next is very, like, not as polished. Look at this. The filter is now variable. So the background can have big smudges while the foreground doesn't. So it varies with depth. So this is the input image used for depth. And now this is the result. Okay, that is much nice. I mean, I really like this filter, but it always felt to me like too obvious of a post process. This also makes it obvious as a post process, but now it's variable, so not as obvious. Awesome. All right. Amazing. This makes it complete. And this is against main. So it's only going to be available in Blender 4.1. 4.0 still is going to have the single size. So maybe, but I mean, the compositor is something that you can do separate from the render. So you could, if you want this feature, you could render your entire film in 4.0, export as EXR, and then run the composite in 4.1 without messing up your files. Next, the C for cycles. We have a new option. Ooh, Terminator. Ta-tan. I feel like in the release notes I mentioned the Terminator, that the Terminator is over. You know, the Terminator line that you have between shading when you have low poly mesh, that you have this problematic crease in the shading. It has been tackled multiple times. The last one was a few versions ago, actually, or many. Before 3.0, I think, was when there was a new property added to Cycles, object shading properties, where you could tweak per object the Terminator, like the softness of the Terminator. Now you can actually control it per material. It's a material setting that allows you to control the smoothing when using bump map. This Cycles implements the Taming the Shadow Terminator paper by Matt Yen Yuan Xiang to solve shadow terminator issues when a bump map is applied, as well as a similar approach for the glossy reflection to ensure rays do not get reflected to inside of the object. The reason to make it per shader rather than per object is to allow flexibility of eye control. It's possible that an object has multiple shaders attached to it, and only some of them are used for bump mapping. Another, and possibly stronger reason to have it per shader is the ease of assets control. Shaders bring settings which are needed for its proper behavior. Ah, yeah, makes sense. If you have an asset, a material asset, but the Terminator settings were not applied to the object, then you could have issues. Good point. Nice. Good to keep it in, to keep this in mind. So yeah, thank you, Sergey Sharivin, and the creator of the paper, Matt. Next, okay, there has been a bunch. If you want to see the full list, the 293 commits of this week, with all the things that I'm skipping, like cleanups and stuff, you can go to the link in the description on Blender community, and you may see that in Cycles there is a bunch of one API changes, a lot of them by Xavier. And I was like, okay, they are preparing for new hardware, maybe, and yes, they are. Meteor Lake I GPUs, internal GPUs. This I was reading along, and apparently it has been announced a while back, but doubles the integrated graphics performance per watt on internal, like Intel's built-in graphics, which is kind of a big deal. Nice, good news. And Blender is already, well, Cycles is already prepared for it, which is so nice. Ahead of the curve. All right. Or in the curve. Or drifting the curve. In a good way or a bad way. Okay. Also, this is another important fix. It's a public service announcement. If your renders in the new Principled BSDF were looking a bit funky, weird, unexpected changes, maybe some tweaks in your Principled BSDF shader were not taking effect in your render, it might have been the issue. So the max closure count was limited to, for performance reasons, was limited to 8, but the new Principled BSDF has a bunch of closures, different closures: transparent sheen, microfacet, emission, microfacet, closure for metallic base layer, like a whole bunch of them. So if you had a really complex shader, it might have looked like, for example, this is a render with 8 closures max, like the previous minimum maximum, and I mean, this is a shader that has all kinds of closures. This is with max 8. This is with max 9, 10, 11, and then 12. It has the same effect. But well, this is with 64, so it was tested with up to 64. 12, it seems to be the max. So yeah, maybe some complex shaders were not rendering properly. Now they are. It's a fix, and it's also in Blender 4.0. So your 4.0 files are safe. Okay, the next update is in the D4DRW the draw engine, simplified selection engine. It's a change by Hermano that it seems to improve and simplify the selection engine in Blender, in the 3D viewport. I don't know if this simplification has any performance improvements though, but the links is in the list of changes. All right, we go from D to E for EEVEE Next. What is this EEVEE Next thing? Well, EEVEE Next is the next version of EEVEE, the internal, the default render engine in Blender. EEVEE was born a long time ago in 2018, and it was finally released for the first time in 2019. But it was never really rewritten since then. It was implemented based on some experiments that were done previously on a branch, on the PBR branch, and like when Blender Internal still was a thing, it was like a separate branch, and then Clement was hired to work on Blender 2.8 and EEVEE and replace the internal renderer with EEVEE. But since then, it was the very first implementation. So now what we get is EEVEE Next, which is all the knowledge in the world that was gathered during all these years into a new engine focused in the future. So it's like EEVEE 2 more than EEVEE Next. EEVEE Next is no longer an experimental engine anymore. It is now available in the regular settings, and you may have used it in the experimental settings. If you enabled through experimental before, not much has changed other than the user interface, improvements to ray tracing. Yes, ray tracing, and also some light probes have been renamed. So actually, well, let me rephrase that. A lot has changed since then. The EEVEE Next panel, you may notice that looks already different. Some names have changed. EEVEE is still there, by the way. EEVEE hasn't gone anywhere. It's still gonna be there until EEVEE Next can be is fully feature parity with EEVEE, and they can be swapped. So EEVEE Next, like when EEVEE Next comes out as a final in a final release, it's gonna be called EEVEE. The same way that Cycles X was never called Cycles X in the UI. It was just Cycles. It was just nicer, better. So EEVEE Next now, this time in this moment in time where EEVEE and EEVEE Next is only temporary. So embrace it, enjoy it while it lasts. EEVEE Next allows you to have things like ray tracing in, and you can already try it in. This is kind of amazing because that means that, for example, I can have no lights and have a material that I simply set to emit, and bam, I have emission on a material. I can change the color in EEVEE. That's kind of great, isn't it? As you can see, it's also kind of noisy, but it's okay. I only have 16 samples here, so if I just leave that, it's gonna get much cleaner. It's also still based on the screen, right? So you gotta be you gotta make sure that you work on it through the camera, so you see. So what you get is what you see is what you get. But that's already kind of amazing. Shadows, reflections. If you want to make this reflective, yeah, why not? Or make this, for example, another color. We can assign it and we can make it emit in, I don't know, let's make it emit blue. Why? Maybe not so much blue. Set this. Oh, this was the default material. That's why. Okay, so even better. I'm gonna make this material then be completely metallic. Completely metallic. Nice. Now I'm playing with fire here while streaming. And let's another material here that is gonna be... It would be nice if when you don't have any... Like, if I assign a material here and there is none assigned to it, it would be nice if Blender could just make one for me, right? Or is it just thinking, just playing, trying to be smart and then making things harder? What would you think? All right, so this is my emission light over here. Let's add an actual object here. Let's go here and then boom. Look at that. Neat. Isn't that amazing? EEVEE knows about bouncing lights anymore. Well, EEVEE next. If you go to EEVEE, this will look much more boring. You need light props and stuff. But yeah, there is a ray tracing panel where you can tweak the settings unified or per component, like reflection, refraction, diffuse. You can also disable ray tracing altogether, go back in time. But this is kind of awesome. Light probes also have new settings over here. Maybe I should just get Clement to make a video like with the one we did with Hans last week to talk about the node tools, but now with EEVEE next. So that would be kinda cool. Now add bloom, says Andre Kling. No, bloom is gone from EEVEE next. EEVEE next does not have bloom because bloom is now can be achieved with the compositor. So maybe there should be a preset for that, like a node, like a group of nodes that Blender, like a node asset that Blender can add. But yeah, without bloom, it means that you can add it through the compositor, and it should be easy to do. It's like it's a post-processing effect. Exactly, it's a post-processing. So we shouldn't be mixing things, and or like hacks. Also, if you add it through the compositor, and if we make it easy for the compositor to have bloom, which is, I mean, it's not really that, shouldn't be that hard, right? You get this, and then you can do like a, maybe you can do like a posterized image, and then we do like a blur the image, and then we can mix this back to this with a, let's enable it for everything always. And is this gonna work? Let's do adding. There you go, look at the massive bloom. Also, if you add the bloom here through the compositor, it's compatible with cycles. You can have cycles, EEVEE, bloom. Maybe also might expose people. This bloom preset might make more people comfortable with the compositor. Well, people should be, well, the glare node also works there. So you have all the options. Yeah, indeed. And one clap by Fran, thank you. Not as easy as a button, but yeah. Well, it should be easy as a button. We should add a button here, like a preset that, or like an asset built in Blender that makes it easy. But the flexibility they have with the compositor is much better, because you can you get exposed to everything else, right? You're not limited to this. So I'm okay with that. Like when I found out that this bloom was not longer gonna be there, I was but then, you know, it's actually better. Okay, this is EEVEE next. I'm going to maybe ask Clement if he wants to join one of these days for a quick video on just the basics and going through the light props, which also have changed names. You may have noticed they are the sphere, plane, and volume light props, and they have settings here where you can bake the volumes with a pool size and sphere. Sphere is like the old cube map, which wasn't correct. It wasn't a cube, because the shape was, I mean, it's like all directional. I will ask Clement to come make a video. Another video that might be coming soon is related to Grease Pencil, but not gonna spoil anything yet. Let's continue. F for fixes. Yeah, I don't usually talk too much about fixes, but I just wanted to mention that there has been some fixes. I couldn't find the fix that was related to the animation player in Blender. The animation player is that what you can find in window, in render view animation. So it opens the Blender animation player. That you can also run Blender-A and give it a path, and it will run the animation player, like an image sequence in that animation player. I couldn't find the actual report, but it was funny to see how many fixes from that one report have been done related to animation player. So for example, failing to playing back JPEG 2000 images. Okay, so like for DCP stuff. Animation player scrubbing with multiple file arguments. Apparently, clip text in the user interface. Fix dragging images into the animation player. It could happen that it would crash. Then fix crash in the animation player when a video fails to load. Instead of crashing, just send a message. Startup. Crash on startup with large images. Playing back images or files of over 2 gigabytes will crash. And also it would fail if it was failing to, it would crash when it was failing to create a texture. So this is just why even sharing all this, because sometimes you wonder like, should I report this? Should I take 10-15 minutes of my time to report this? And sometimes one report finds an inspired developer to, just trying to fix one thing, and then 10-20 fixes happen like in this week. So please, if you can, whenever you can, if you find a crash, I know it's much easier to tweet about it. Hey, this crash happens, instead of actually opening a bug report and or mentioning in the chat instead of making a bug report. And take the time to create a bug report, please, because especially now that we're in beta of a major release like 4.0, this is crucial if we don't want to have developers spend their time on Blender 4.0.1, which comes with a whole lot of, like overhead when any release. So the more we report now, the more time developers will have to fix Blender in the future, to make Blender better. So it's like a kind of donation. If you can't donate to the Blender Development Fund, oh, sorry for blinding you, also blind myself. It's a good way to donate your time. Next feature for font, F for font. This change, doesn't have any impact to the user today, but it opens the doors for many features in the future. This is an internal change that stores when you load a font, it stores the size, styles, and other metrics like slant, X height, cap height, and all that fancy stuff of especially on variable fonts. All of that info is now stored in Blender and soon could be exposed in the shape of features soon. So pretty neat. Maybe we can talk about this at the Blender conference in the UI talk. All right, G for Grease Pencil. Grease Pencil is still highly experimental. It's still a setting that you turn on in the preferences because it's not stable, it's not feature complete, not nearly feature complete. However, it already has many more features than the regular Grease Pencil, like layer groups and geometry nodes support. As of this week, we have geometry nodes support, and not only that, but there will be a blog post on the code blog about a task force, asking the community for help. Anybody can help, because basically all the nodes that could support that Grease Pencil could support need to be ported into the new system. And many of the features from Grease Pencil have to be ported over, so you don't have to have 5 PhDs in C++ to do it. It's mainly it's more about If you have experience, of course, it's better. But if you can read some code, commit by other people, and try to apply that to other nodes, it's a huge help. This was done in the past actually with the modifiers. Remember that in Blender 2.8 at the beginning, Blender didn't support modifiers, and well, that was because of all the internal changes, but also because the modifiers have to be ported to a new system, and that's a lot of modifiers. So the community helped out to re-implement all the modifiers one by one. So that's gonna happen soon. This week we're gonna publish that blog post, hopefully. Next, G4G. Well, if you want to see everything that's new in Grease Pencil 3, by the way, on this really for this week, the list is the complete list is here on the post. On like Dalai has been working so much, like implementing nodes, curve to mesh, curve to point, set curve, set spline, set curve to normal, fix normal field. Like Dalai is back on code. Apparently, it's a nice task, like something you can do on chill on the couch and move over some nodes. All right, G for geometry nodes has one change, one feature, that is add default input options for node groups. So in order to recreate the behavior of some built-in nodes which have implicit inputs for ID or index or positions, provide a hard-coded list of default connected fields for sockets. The point is to let assets recreate the behavior of built-in nodes in a simple way that's easy to change in the future if this becomes a more generalized feature. So this is related to the years-long promise of moving some built-in nodes or built-in modifiers into geometry nodes. So this is a good move in that direction. Super nice. Thank you, Hans, for working on this. For example, this makes it possible to add the add random rotation node as an asset in the essentials bundle. The essentials bundle is those that come built in Blender. Next, so I for internationalization. The announcement of the Translate platform last week was a success. Many people have joined the translations team, and now we have Khmer and Swahili languages supported. Well, added as support, so the community can jump in and start translating them. And as always, if you haven't watched last week's episode, what I'm talking about, you can read more on code.blender.org translations platform. Here you will see the behind the scenes and some questions. You can leave questions too there, but better go to the chat that is mentioned in that blog post. M for metal, a small improvement in performance. This patch improves the heuristics used to determine frames in flight at different input latency levels. Previous values adjusted to better encapsulate workloads in the 10 to 20 frames per second range, which can manifest excessive latency. Yep. Changes improve total performance, throughput, and improve the interactive user experience for Apple devices, because we are talking about metal. Next. In the N for nodes, add forward compatibility for dynamic node declarations. Okay, so this is why I have this on this list, because of hype. Because this is a change that adds forward compatibility for dynamic node declarations. The goal of this patch is to allow the use of dynamic node declarations for various nodes in a future version of Blender. So what this code is in the year 3000 already. This is allowing changes that are not even in Blender yet, and this should be ported over to 3.6 even. So that way Blender 3.6 can support nodes made with future Blender versions of Blender that use dynamic nodes. And related to that, there was the big commit on the unification of static and dynamic declarations. Neat. The future of nodes is here. And well, related to actually I should have mentioned this before. So the P for play anim. Play anim. I didn't, when I saw the commit, I was, what is play anim? Play anim is the internal name for Blender's animation player, what I just mentioned now about the fixes. Well, I mentioned this again because the fix that somebody reported triggered a bunch of fixes, but also new features. Because now, well, this is more like a fix. Don't expand sequences when passing multiple files. Because now the animation player can support multiple files at once. That's a feature that wasn't there before, and now it is, thanks to a bug report. Place the indicator closest to the mouse cursor instead of to the left. And now also show errors when in the UI when images cannot load. So again, a bug fix, a bug report that becomes a bunch of fixes that also become a bunch of features. So yeah, reporting, please report stuff. R for real-time compositor, immediately realize transformations. Transform results are always realized in an expanded domain that avoids clipping due to rotating or scaling. The size of the transform domain is clipped to the GPU texture size limit for now, until we have support for huge texture. So the limit is typically 16K, which 16K is kind of big already for some cases, for some use cases. And this fixes an issue with immediately realized transformations. So the canvas size is correctly set. There was a bunch of refactors as well, and for the user interface, we have a few changes. So the UI team listened. There's been a bit of a revolution, multiple reports and threads with multiple comments, all with all kinds of moods in them about the search. And I know search results have been a bit of a back and forth. The Blender 4.0 beta switch happened a bit too early. I know a bit too early, it was when it was planned, but the search changes happened maybe a bit too late in the process of 4.0. So beta was out, people were getting used to a way of searching into menus, and that was confusing because we were still working on it and trying to figure out how to deal with the whole interaction and try to make people that use accelerator keys happy, but also people that like to search happy, and also introducing new features and how to introduce and how to expose them. So long story short, huge news, because I think what we have arrived to is the best of all worlds, because you can do everything that you could do in 3.6 related to search and more. First, you can now search on all menus with spacebar. This is something that wasn't possible in 3.6. So let's go here. What do you mean by searching in all menus? Well, in the past, in Blender 3.6, you could search in node editors by clicking on search, and that's it. This was the only way to search in the whole of Blender. You couldn't search any menus. But that has changed because this operator is now exposed in all the add menus. So Shift A for adding objects, you can also search in here. Kinda neat. Then search Shift A to add modifiers, you can also search for modifiers here. Isn't that great? Yes, it is great. Because you can also right click and assign a shortcut if you want to search. So if I do Shift A, then Shift A makes, well, actually it should take over Shift A in this context. But you can say Control A, for example. I do Control A. So Control A now. It works great actually. Control A is not really. I found a bug. So okay, which shortcut is gonna work? One that is not assigned to anything. So F7 is not assigned to anything. F7. Okay, this one works. So it doesn't take over existing shortcuts. This bug needs to be reported. However, What is more exciting is that you can also search this menu and all the add menus by simply starting to type. So you do Shift A, I don't know, say ball, and you add a meta ball. Isn't that great? Well, you can do this anywhere. So you can, in the modifiers, for example, you can also just do Shift A and start typing mirror, and you add a mirror modifier. Neat. The same with the node editor. You can type to search in add menus. But also, it doesn't even stop there. In every other menu, you can, well, almost every other menu, you can now spacebar to search. So because spacebar wasn't taken for anything, spacebar is, well, you can set it to search, you can set it to playback, but when the menu is open, a menu open is like a modal operator. You can't do anything. You can play back. Like if I set playback to search again, so playback to animation, Shift A, spacebar, wasn't used because it's also not a accelerator key. So you couldn't, it wasn't used. But now is search, and this works everywhere. So in the add menu, you can press spacebar to search instead of going to click the search manually. You can also search in every menu. So file, for example, if I want to search for FBX, like I just press spacebar, FBX, and I have it every menu. So object menu is huge. Yes, it should be cleaned up, but it is huge. Where is that option that you were looking for? For example, here, make parent without inverse. Where is that? You can type spacebar, parent, inverse, and then you find it. So every menu, including those in add-ons. So if you have add-ons that have a bunch of menus, you can search in there. Also in submenus. So if you're searching in a submenu here, you can also press spacebar, and it's gonna filter only that submenu, so you don't have a lot of noise. Depends on where you have the mouse over. So handy. If your mouse is over this one, this big menu, searches this menu, and this side searches this menu. And I think I'm not missing anything. Some menus, like the editor menu, doesn't support search because this menu needs some love also. It's complicated. It's not a choice that this search is not available here. It's hard. Trust me. I don't know anything, but I've seen developers struggle with that. It's kind of amazing that this happens, especially for USD. Yeah, you can have USD here. Type USD, search. Yeah, that's it. I hope everybody's happy with how this works, because also the underlined keys where, for example, if you want to shade smooth, you do shade S to shade smooth, that still works. But you can also press space to search in this menu, in the context menu, in every menu. Let's see, even the open recent, if I search for Blenderella, would it work? Blender. Yeah, with the mouse over Blenderella works. So if you have a bunch of open files, you can search in there. It's kind of nice. Can you start typing on ones without search? No, because we tried that, and then a bunch of people complained that they wanted to have the behavior of these underlined keys where you can press them to trigger options very quickly. It's a very nice workflow, but it conflicts with the type to search, because yeah. So the best solution for 4.0 is just to go with spacebar to search. If in the future enough people agree that this is a behavior that is a type of workflow, maybe a user preference could be introduced. I don't know. Depends on how much yeah, people request that feature. Let's move on. Input placeholders. I love this one. I love this because it just feels like it was always there. It's like, I don't know if you notice here, but you notice anything in particular? Like anything, let's see, in the asset browser maybe? Do you see anything different? Some items have a gray out text in them, which serves as a hint of what can you select. That in other well, in other, I don't know if other software has it, probably they do because it's very standard. On web, for example, that is called a placeholder, and it's a property of text inputs that allow you to give a hint to about what can you do, or what kind of information. For example, on email inputs, you could have like example@email.com or email@example.com. In this case, for example, a movie clip or scene, a camera, you can see what type of data they support, which is pretty handy when the data it's not clearly labeled, or it is labeled, but it's just in a way that has a different name. For example, in this case, in the particle system settings, the coordinate label, coordinate system, shows this item, and now before, in the past, it would just be empty. So you will have to know that this is the object type icon and that you have to choose an object, because Blender doesn't show here. Blender could show maybe a title that says object, but now it shows a hint. Super nice. And this is automatic, so all the add-ons that support it can use it, but also add-ons can have their own and are encouraged to use their own, because you can set this value via Python with the text placeholder and then whatever. And if you save that, or if you type that in your add-on, you can set this. So this, for example, you can say like select something please, and then it will be added there. So you can give hints to your users. I think it's a big one for usability. I really love it. That's it, maybe? No, wait, more. Window tile Blender path changes. Window title Blender path changes. So there was a report, some remarks from the community giving some feedback on the feature that was added some time ago, where the title of the window, where you would have the name first and then .blend, and then the name at the end without the blend, was causing issues because of how things were in the past. This has caused some issues even here in production. So going through it again with the UI team, it was decided that the name of the file was going to be added to the path again. So people that see the entire path, they get the entire path. And at the very beginning, it would show only the name of the blend file. In the future, it would be nice to show the name of your project, but Blender doesn't have the concept of a project yet. So for the time being, the name of your file without the extension gives you a bit of a hint, especially if you happen to have like a bunch of Blender opens, and you have, for example, in this case, if you have a bunch of files open and Blender, I don't know if you get to see it now. I don't think it's placed in the right place, but in this case I have Blenderella here, and I could have this other that says no tools hands. So at the beginning of the name of the window, you see what are you working on, which is super handy. Okay, next. This is it's a fix mainly. It's a highlight selected item in the view 3D mode menu. So to me it's a fix because in Blender 4.0, the menus that have like enums that can have an item active are highlighted, and up until a few days ago, the object menu wasn't. It couldn't highlight. And from the user point of view, this is a bug, right? Because this menu and whatever other menu look exactly the same, but they're not. Actually, internally they're very different. So this has to be done as a separate patch. So thank you, Hans, for reviewing, and Harley for working on this. And last but not least, in the UI, it's a fix, an improvement to the string search. So the code for search in general. The word separate, like usually when you separate words, it's usually space, right? Like you have curve to mesh. So curve space to curve mesh. But sometimes you are naming your assets with a dash or an underscore, and the search wasn't taking this into account. Now it is. So if you have assets, names, whatever, the operators that use underscore or dashes, now the search will treat them as separators. Nice. And the last but not least, Vulkan had a bunch of changes, improvements, I hope, since last week. You can read more about it here. However, you can also read in the code blog a beautiful blog post by Jorun that explains everything you need to know about Vulkan. Why Vulkan? How Vulkan? We need your help. Yes, you, please help. If you have experience, code, and of course, it's always contributions are welcome. That's all. That's actually everything that I had to cover regarding Blender development. I think we have some time, right? Let's do 5 questions. There's 8 items. Maybe I can do all 8, and then my voice will be over. But let's start from the bottom. I'm gonna try to answer them all. Okay, I'm gonna have a mate first. Yerba mate, and actually finished it. If you are Argentinian, Uruguayan, Chilean, and come to visit the Blender studio, bring some mate. Especially if it's something from your region. A mate from your region is even better, nicer. Okay. Namnabat says, Oi, Pablo, at what level are semi-breaking changes considered for 4.1? At what level? Interesting. I made a bug report on the UI issues with spline tangents. I was told the UI results directly affected the node output and thought you might want to look at it with fancy pictures. So UI changes. At what level semi-breaking change? I made a bug report on UI issues with spline. I was told the UI results directly affected the node output. Even, really? Well, that is a UI widget function. I don't see the relation between semi-breaking changes considered for 4.1. Like 4.1 is it's another release which is gonna break some things like EEVEE next, right? Decrease pencil. There are some things that are expected to break, which is not ideal for a small regular release. But because happens before the next LTS, so from 3.6, people that go LTS to LTS every year, from 3.6 to 4.3 and 4.6, I think this would be acceptable. Like it would be acceptable to do some smaller breaking changes as long as they are for the better, right? For improving usability. Okay, so the too long didn't read is remember when a new keyframe between two others in the graph editor changed animation curves? Yes, that still happens in every node with a curve, even new ones. It shouldn't be a hard fix as there are no handles to worry about, but I do think it should be considered for 4.0 as it is in quite a back-breaking change, but it would change the results on existing node, on existing geometry nodes, material nodes, and the old texture nodes. At least I know why my atmosphere shaders never had smooth edges. The ramp solution and vector nodes never gave smooth curves. Well, I don't know if something this big for... Yeah, I don't know if something... Oh, Jesus. So this is how it looks. Eek. Yeah. It's kind of a breaking change. I will ask the team, because it is UI, but it's also not UI, right? It's just like a UI, like a core widget. Okay, so next, I will ask the developers. Hi Pablo, do you know any interest in maintaining a Flatpak for Blender, releasing an official Flatpak? Perhaps the non-NVIDIA GPU stuff is more even streamlined. I know Canonical sponsors Blender, but they don't limit you, right? Nope. No, Canonical, it's a sponsor of Blender. One of the reasons why we ship snaps for Blender officially. But Flatpak, actually, I don't know if anybody has like said, hey, I want to make a Flatpak. But someone that wants to commit to always having a Flatpak. I love Flatpaks. I use them all the time. I use even I use Ubuntu here, but I use mainly Flatpaks, and I switch to even the browser and OPS, everything as much Flatpak as possible. But having it for Blender would only make sense. I think it's, if someone is willing to commit to this. Usually this happens by someone making it and making it and making it for a year, and then it's like, okay, actually this person kept up the promise, so they become the official maintainers. All right, Daniela Palm says, hi Pablo, how are you? I'm good, thank you. In 4.1, I noticed in the shader editor, the material output, there is a thickness now, but I can't find any documentation on this. Do you know anything about this? I don't, actually. Thickness? No, I may have missed that too. Thickness. Interesting. Oh, is this for the principal BSDF? Good question. Is it available everywhere? Yeah. Is it available? Yes, zero documentation on this. That's not nice. Okay, let's look at the manual for this. So let's see. So if I search for output, material output, and then I go to the online manual for this, which didn't work. Let's go to the blender.org/manual. I'm also curious. Maybe someone in the, for translucent says, but make the material thicker. For translucent, is it? Is it? Let's go to 4.0 and let's search for thickness. Mesh analysis, thickness, photo 4. Thickness modifier. Another photo 4. Searching this thing is horrible. So I might be better out by going to the materials, probably material section, and then going into rendering. We go to shader nodes, output, material node. Thickness is not even here. Ah, it's a 4.1? No, it's just not added there yet. Yeah. I don't know. It seems to be for translucent. I'll ask the devs. Sick Monkey Dove says, good evening, Pablo. A couple of years ago, you had Francesco at BlenderToday where he presented channels in the Blender video sequencer. And he talked about some design work planned for the video sequencer, like splitting channels onto audio and video, but since then there was pretty small amount of changes at this topic. Since animation is high prior now, including Grease Pencil, any chance we'll get some VSE improvements in terms of scene management, storyboarding, caching, and overall performance, and maybe a redesign? Any plans there? So the plans and the wishes are still there. Unfortunately, the one person that works in the VSE module also is working on triaging and bug fixing. So triaging the bug reports and all the everything that gets reported. And the last thing he worked on was the retiming tool, which is new in 4.0. I think those the ideas that you mentioned, they're still valid, and we still want to work on it, but just there's not enough like human power, which you can help by joining the Blender Development Fund. 3,591 individuals are subscribed, and they're contributing every month. Out of the 1.3 million, yes, 1.3 million downloads last month, 3,500 people contributed, which is big. Thank you, 3,500. It went up. Yes, it went up. But I wish we had more individuals than corporate, like, because yeah, if one corporate goes down, is like thousands of people went down, so it's much harder to take down many individuals than corporate. So I mean, if you're watching this, you watch this every day. I don't need to sell anything to you. You should poke the people that you follow, the influencers in other social media, if they are contributors to the development fund. And no, selling add-ons and marking the hard development fund, whatever, in the market, that doesn't count. It doesn't work. It should go directly. It should be like a contribution by the person. Next. Since any plans there? Yes, there are plans. Next. Slow Kid says, Hola Pablo, I wanted to bring attention to a request I made some time ago for always opening a blend file in solid mode. This is because if you close Blender with the shading mode, set to material preview. Yes, I ran into this the other day actually. I was opening a file for the Blender 3.0 splash screen where the character is in shading mode, and yeah, it's terrible. If you say, well, and close the blend file with the shading material preview, once you open the file, yes. I think it should be part of like the load UI, should be, or like a force UI, or yeah, I think so. I agree. Let me, am I logged in? I'm gonna log in here, and I want to, not here, but I'm gonna upvote your, there you go, upvoting this. 1 year ago, gee, I ran into this the other day, and I thought of making an option for that. Why are people asking, change global coordinate system to have Y point up? It's kind of a big deal. XYZ defaults instead of G as R. Interesting. Yeah. Sometimes when looking at some feature requests, it looks like there are some people out there that don't want to use Blender. Some people just, I'm not pointing this directly, but it's looking at some posts on forums, on other forums, community forums. Like some people just want a free Maya. It's a bit sad because open source lets you do so much more than just using it for free, and coming up with actual innovative, ways of working. And let's continue. Blender is spreading like a wildfire in India, says Pranay. We all want to donate to Blender Development Fund, but it would be great if you start UPI payment for donation. It will be very easy for us to donate. It will be very easy for us to donate to the Blender Development Fund. Even Wikipedia started taking donations using OP. Yes, thank you. First, thanks for making this the last question, because it really fits with the closing of the show, and also because we do want to support API, and we want to support. When I was recently in China, everybody was using WeChat and like WePay and Alipay for everything. Like everything is these two big, massive ways of paying. So we're losing a big chunk of the community by not supporting those, by not making it easier to support those. However, for donations, it's a lot more tricky. We need to set up, like, we'll have to like set up a company there, something like that. It's not easy. It's not just a toggle in Stripe payments, unfortunately. I don't know about the case of our API. I'm gonna mention this back to the team to see if how can this be enabled. But yeah, definitely this should be addressed, because India is like the second or third most visited visitors of blender.org, next to China and the US and Russia and all the big visitors. We should just make it, we should just make it easy to donate. It's not just about asking people to donate, it should be also easy to donate. That it is all. I hope you had a good show today. I hope you had a good round of updates, that you will use anything that I showed today. Are you using EEVEE Next already? I think EEVEE Next, with the fixes to the Principal VSDF, with the AGX color profile, with the ray tracing stuff, it's gonna be next, well, no November, it's gonna be nuts. No November, the November event for making everything with nodes. It's gonna be quite amazing, with the new repeat zone, simulations, nodes, and so much more. Other than that, I'm not going to see you next week. Well, I am going to see you next week if you come to Blender Conference. If you don't, I will see you maybe the week after. However, because of the week after will be like 2 days after the Blender. I really need to focus on the Blender 4.0. So stay tuned to the social media, to Mastodon and Blender and YouTube, and here the community tab on the channel, because I'm going to announce there. However, I think it's better to focus on 4.0 because it is a huge release. I'm already using 4.1 and many of the features that I mentioned today are for 4.1. But let's not forget the Blender, like a lot of people are going to use Blender for the first time in 4.0, and they're going to switch to Blender 4.0. And let's hope it's a big release. Other than that, I think I'm ready to close. I hope you have a fantastic week, however you can in this crazy world. I wish you all the best, and be safe out there. Happy blending, and I will talk to you next time. Watch out for your ear holes. Might not be that loud. No, it's not. All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.